الله تعالى. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. O Aba al-Qasim, messenger of Allah, guide of mercy, Ya Sayyidana wa Mawlana, inna tawajjahna wastashfa'na وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. O Aba al-Hasan, commander of the faithful, O Ali, son of Abu Talib, proof of Allah over mankind, Ya Sayyidana wa Mawlana, inna tawajjahna wastashfa'na وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. O Fatimatu Zahra, daughter of Muhammad, joy to the eye of the Prophet, O our leader and master, inna tawajjahna wastashfa'na وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله. O Aba Muhammad, O Hassan, son of Ali, the chosen one, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind, O our leader and master, inna tawajjahna wastashfa'na وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. O Aba Abdullah, O Hussein, son of Ali, the martyr, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind, O our leader and master, إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. O Abul Hassan, O Ali, son of Hussein, the adornment of the worshippers. O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind, O our leader and master. إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر, O Muhammad, son of Ali, the spreader of knowledge, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind, O our leader and master, we draw near and intercede through you to Allah. Help us win the favor of Allah as we seek our needs from Him. Ya wajihan inda Allah, ishfa' lana inda Allah. Ya Aba Abdillah, O Ja'far, son of Muhammad, the truthful one, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind. O our leader and master, إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن, O Aba Ibrahim, O Musa, son of Ja'far, the restrained one, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind, O our leader and master. إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. O Abul Hassan, O Ali, son of Musa, the one who pleases, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind. Ya Sayyidana wa Mawlana, إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. O Aba Ja'far, O Muhammad, son of Ali, the the God conscious and generous, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind. O our leader and master, inna tawajjahna واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي, the guide, the pure, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind. O our leader and master, إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد, O Hassan, son of Ali, the pure one, the resident of Samarra, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind, O our leader and master, إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. O successor of Al-Hassan, the successor, the proof, O awaited one who will uprise the guided, O son of the messenger of Allah, proof of Allah over mankind, O our leader and master, إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. حاجات إن شاء الله. اللهم صل. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله، وتوسلت بكم إلى الله، واستشفعت بكم إلى الله، فاشفعوا لي عند الله، واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله، فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله، وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله، فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله، صلى الله عليهم أجمعين، ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين، آمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات، رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. تقبل Allah, may Allah accept all of your dua. For today's reminder, I wanted to share a beautiful hadith that's narrated from our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding the importance of having constructive dialogue. One of the tips that is very important for us to learn and to apply in our lives in order to have successful and thriving and pleasant and comfortable home environments is that we have to pay attention to the nature of our dialogue, the way that we talk to one another in our homes. A lot of what makes home life pleasant or bitter depends on the type of conversations that happen. Now, it's not only important for us to be focused on what we should say, it's also important for us to be focused on what we shouldn't say. Meaning that there are times when we should speak and there's times that we shouldn't speak. The natural instinct that we have when we're conversing with somebody is for our tongue to race ahead, and when there's something that we recognize, we have a flash of insight, there's something that we want to say, we say it. But wise people think before they speak. Wise people know that there are times where even though we have something to offer, it's better for us not to say that. The hadith I want to share is the following. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, أنا زعيم ببيت في ربض الجنة وبيت في وسط الجنة وبيت في أعلى الجنة. He says that I am guaranteeing that there will be a home for a person in the lower levels of Jannah, and a home for somebody in the mid-levels of Jannah, and a home for somebody who's in the highest levels of Jannah. Now, when the Prophet speaks about a home in Jannah, and he says that this is the reward for people, and he's going to explain now what is it that you need in order to get to this home, let's keep in mind that the rewards that are given in paradise have a direct connection with the deeds that are performed in this world. It's not the case that somebody performs something and then, Allah just randomly gives them like this reward. No, there's a connection. In fact, according to the deep teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, the reality of the deeds that we perform in this world are seen in the hereafter. So when the Prophet is talking about a home which is promised for people, whether it be in the lower level or the mid-level or the higher levels of Jannah, perhaps we can infer from this that what's reflected here is something which they're applying in their home as well. There's a connection between that and then what's happening in this world. Now, what are these homes in paradise promised for? According to this hadith, the Prophet says that the first home is liman tarakal mira'a wa in kana muhiqqan. For the one who leaves aside arguing and dispute even though they're on the right. Now this is really important. There are many times when we're at home. Now, of course, we can apply this outside of home as well too, but I'm trying to give some tips about how we can improve our family lives and our home lives. So there are many times where there's a conversation, that we're having a conversation with somebody, and let's say with our children, with our parents, with our spouses, brothers, sisters, and we could sort of say that thing which is going to prove that we're right. We can totally make that other side crumble. We have exactly what we need to say. But the Prophet says that, look, when you're doing jidal is, it can be a type of argumentation where there's a purpose behind it. It's useful. But many times, jidal that takes place, arguments that take place, it's not for any good purpose. It's really about asserting oneself. It's really a way of appeasing one's own lower desires. There's a certain sense of happiness and gloating that somebody has when they win an argument. When we get in the situation where we're discussing something and now it turns into, like, let's say, a type of debate about who's right and who's wrong, it's very important that we check ourselves and we ask ourselves, is it even worth my continuing this in the way that it is right now? For example, if I have a child and the child is going through a certain type of stage where they're struggling and they're coming into finding their own personality, I have to navigate a delicate balance. On one hand, I don't want to leave them completely free and just for them to think whatever they want and form their own opinions however they want and do whatever they want. No, I have to be there to guide them. That's my responsibility as a parent. On the other hand, I don't want to forcefully force them into a corner either. And no, I have to be able to guide them, but also let them come to their own conclusions on certain things. I have to give them those premises, but allow them to sometimes derive their conclusions. Sometimes, of course, I need to step in and say, no, this is right and this is wrong. But sometimes it might be more effective not to actually say the conclusion. Let them come up with it themselves. Or let's say I'm in an argument. Then when I've already said what I need to say and they're still stubbornly insisting on their point, I don't need to go and force them to acknowledge that I'm right. No, as long as whatever has needed to be said has been said, then that's enough. They might still be insisting, but they still hurt. And at the end, after the emotions are gone, at one point, it might come sometime later, inshallah, we hope that they're going to accept the reasoning that I presented. And sometimes it might be better not even to bring up something. Let's say we know that somebody's doing something that's wrong. We could speak about it, but let's say that there's a lot of other things that we could focus on that are much more important. Maybe this is something that person is going to get over by themselves. It's a small, annoying habit. It's just something that they'll realize themselves that it's silly. Rather than addressing it and picking on that and losing the ability to have influence on something which is more important, I might decide to just not speak about it at all and just let it pass. And in that way, I'm doing the wise thing. I'm choosing and picking my battles and the strategically. I'm going to stick my ground on those red lines, but on other things, I'm going to let them go because there's something actually where maybe it's better for me to just be there in the background and try to set the example rather than bringing it up. Remember that there are different ways of correcting behavior. Using the tongue is only one of the ways, and oftentimes it's one of the weakest and poorest ways of addressing an issue. Many times it's much better to set the right example through our own actions. Many times it's much better to show our displeasure by just not acknowledging that type of behavior, and in that way we're indirectly showing that it's not something which is desirable, it's not something which is positive. Sometimes, yes, we might need to speak up, but even then we have to be careful. What do we need to say, and when can we just back off and let the process itself take place? Remember, Allah has given everyone a power of intellect, and sometimes it just takes time in order for somebody to apply it. Once they've heard, for them to act on it, it sometimes takes some time. The Prophet continues, he says, وَلِمَنْ تَرَكَ الْكِذْبَ وَإِنْ كَانَ هَازِنًا. The second home in Jannah, which is now at a higher level, the Prophet promises, is for the person who leaves aside lying, even though it might be out of a joke. There are some people who get into this habit of, they mean well, they want people to laugh, but the only way they know how to make people laugh is by lying. They just crack jokes and they sort of say this thing or that thing, and then everyone sort of takes a deep breath, like they're like a sharp breath. They're like, oh really? And then he's like, no, I'm just joking. Okay, and everyone laughs then. Now, saying jokes at appropriate times, being humorous, lightening up the mood, these are things which are extremely essential for any gatherings, for any home environment. Our homes should be places where there is cheer, there are opportunities for joy. And it's important, for children to see their parents in being able to express a range of emotions. Not that the only thing that they should see from them is, let's say, seriousness and, let's say, sadness and sternness. No, there are times for that, and there are times for being cheerful and happy and easygoing and good-natured, of course, at all times, even when they're stern, even when they're sad. Now, here, the Prophet is inviting us to be careful about this, that don't let yourself, in the pursuit of wanting to have that humorous, humor and that type of cheerful environment, don't let yourself slip into sinfulness, which is the sinfulness of lying. Lying is lying, whether it's out of a joke or whether it's something which is serious. And it's important enough, and meaning that it's an important struggle enough that the Prophet is saying that this is something which you're rewarded for. And perhaps we can take from this, we know that if the Prophet knows the hidden nature of different actions. And so when he's telling us that this type of lying is so serious that if you stay away from it, you're promised a home in Jannah, it means that having that type of lying can lead to negative consequences in relationships. It can lead to a lack of trust. It's very important that in a home environment, there's a deep sense of trust, and that trust can only come about when there's a deep commitment to truthfulness. And the last quality that the Prophet says, he says, this one, if you have, it leads to the highest home in the higher levels, in the highest levels of Jannah. He says, وَلِمَنْ حَسُنَ خُلْقُهُ, for the one whose behavior and his character is good, for the people who are good-natured. Now this is, of course, something that is hugely important in a home environment. Whether we're in a state of, let's say, argument or discussion or debate with others, whether we're trying to crack a joke, whether we're doing other things, the important things at all times we should strive for having not just passable and not just like average type of interactions and behavior. We should strive for having a higher level, something that is praiseworthy at all times, whether we're upset, whether we're not, whether we're trying to discipline, whether we're not. That good-naturedness, that being at the top of our manners, having the most excellent of speech, that is something which has an incredibly powerful effect in creating the type of home environment that we would like to have. May Allah Ta'ala help us to learn and understand the beautiful teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, to apply them in our lives and to convey them to others. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin.